Hey everyone, this is Ben Cecchini, founder of Give and Grow, here with another episode of the Give and Grow podcast. If you're new to this series, this is where we break down social emotional learning, what it is, why it's helpful for kids, and how we as adults, teachers, coaches can incorporate it into our day-to-day to help raise healthy, loving human beings. Everybody, today I'm super excited to introduce you to Alicia Fuse. Alicia is a school counselor with her master's in education and school counseling, postmasters in counseling, and also a certificate in trauma. So we're excited to break down some of those topics to you today. And Alicia, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, of course. Of course. We're definitely excited to have you on here to pick your brain, to share with the people listening in. So to kind of start off the conversations for people that might be new to social emotional learning, can you just break down what that is and why it's so important for young kids?
Of course. So social emotional learning is something as school counselors, especially in the state of Virginia, we are required to teach to our students. But there are five key components to it. The first one is self-awareness. You really can't teach any type of coping skills or social awareness or even relationship skills until individuals and students are aware of their own emotions and who they are and how they respond to things. So once they're aware of their own
Mm-hmm.
emotions, maybe what their triggers are, then we can get into the self-management, which is the second piece. So self-management is starting to learn those basic coping skills that we think come naturally to a lot of people, but not everyone has those because they are learned behaviors. They're learned how to cope, and what we see on TV and in our own houses make a difference. And then after that, we get to social awareness because we have to see how we react to other people too, because our triggers sometimes are not
Mm.
only within ourselves, but also what's happening in a group setting, in a classroom. If we get called out by a teacher, is that a trigger? And once that, then we can hone in on building relationship skills, and that's where we create the strong friendships, the strong bonds, and those are a huge piece. A lot of times for educators, we start with the relationships because without relationship, we can't do anything else. And then we
Mm.
get to the responsible decision making. So once we have all the pieces, we can start using those decision making skills that are in our brain, and we, as when we're growing and our kids, our parents teach us, our guardians or whoever we're living with and around, but then we can start making them for ourselves once we're aware of our own emotions, how we manage, and it continues to go down the line.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate you breaking down like the order that you would like approach this in of like, okay, first we have to be aware of ourselves, then we can start to manage ourselves with these different skills, then we can get socially aware, build relationships, and make responsible decisions. Super powerful, and I don't think I've had somebody on the show yet like break it down in that order, but it makes a ton of sense, right? Like the self awareness, the self management, just like diving a little bit into those first two, right? The
Yeah.
self awareness, the self management, since those are kind of the first places to start. Um, how would you approach like a young kid? I don't know how old, maybe kindergarten younger, first grade younger, in starting to develop some of those skills or awarenesses?
Yeah, so we work with them. Ironically, I've now worked with all levels from pre-K up to 12th grade as a school counselor. So I do have that background. But with the littles, as I call them, it is making them aware of saying, okay, you got angry. What made you angry? And sometimes it's truly just breaking it down step by step by step.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids will say, well, if someone takes something of my mom's, then she hits the person, so for them it's the automatic, this is a learned behavior. Well, then it's
Mm-hmm.
teaching, okay, you're aware of what made you mad, but let's manage it differently because we can't go around
Right.
just hitting people. And in houses it's different sometimes, like a parent might joke like, get away, hit me, things like that, but
Right.
we can't do that in school. So it really is, you have to meet them at their level. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people say, oh, well, that's dumbing myself down or someone else's down, but it's not. We have to meet them at their level and what they're capable of learning and their own awareness of the world and what's happening. So with the self
Right.
awareness, it's breaking it down. It's going, okay, here's what happened, then what happened, and the step by steps. And little kids, they do have little squirrel brains, so sometimes you got to take a break and come back to it, and then you slowly work on those pieces and build up.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate that you brought in the break piece just so it can be like, okay, we have it's more of a reflection versus a fixing it in the moment, especially with some of the more challenging emotions. You also mentioned early on when you were explaining like the self-management piece that these are like learned behaviors from TV, from family, from friends, like just from their lived experience, they're picking up on these different ways to manage emotions. But I wanted to highlight that you also said that these things don't just come naturally to people, they're learned.
Yeah.
So what are some of those ways that you like to teach some management skills, or what are some management skills that you like to teach to really anybody?
It's ironic. I like to teach them to everybody, even grown adults sometimes when they're struggling, or my colleagues. But some of the things we teach is just, we know breathing is a huge thing, but breathing doesn't work for everybody. Some people just don't
Mm.
have the capacity to take those slow breaths or want it. So we do grounding techniques, like with using our five main senses. We do
Mm-hmm.
different hand fidgets so that they can, one of them is, we call it thumb twirling. So you literally just twirl your thumbs, or finger play. Yeah, finger play. The self squeeze, so you hug yourself. So we start
Mm-hmm.
with some basic ones. We talk about, as they get older, because I have done groups with this, small groups and stuff in school, we talk about what are you seeing at home versus what are you seeing in TV, versus what is real versus what isn't, and how would that be appropriate.
Mm.
And again, it's not an easy fix. There are breaks. It's a lifelong learning. I do it with
Right.
my own child. I actually have a child with a mood disorder, ADHD, major depressive disorder, and generalized anxiety. So he's 16, but we're constantly still learning from a young age. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important that we have to be willing to help the kids and not just see their behaviors, but see that they need to learn. They're not aware of what they're doing, maybe even as they get older. And we
Yeah.
have to take our time. We have to be patient.
Yeah, yeah, like you said, lifelong process. I'm over here. This is why I'm so passionate about it, because it is like something we can continue to fine tune throughout our life, and it really can change those relationships that we find ourselves in.
Oh,
You hinted on something that we also haven't discussed on this show yet, around what's real and what's not. And that seems like a really important question in this space, or just in life in general, as things are turning into more AI, and animation is obviously, animation's been around for a while, but things can look so real. Like, what is kind of your thought around approaching that conversation? What's real and what's not, and how does that tie into social emotional learning?
it's hard because now with TikTok and everything like that, and I can't say I don't watch TikTok because I do, but they see things with the animations, or even on like Real Housewives or shows like that, because they're young, they're watching these, they're even watching true crime shows starting in like first, second grade.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have my opinion on that, but each parent is different. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's breaking it down like, okay, when you're watching these true crime shows, what these people are doing is real. Like, this person's not coming back, or this person did this and that. Sometimes when we talk about like the reality TV shows, and I use that term lightly, reality, there's a lot of setup, there's a lot of fakeness.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about how these people get in massive fights, but then they're never arrested. And we're like, well, that's an issue because this would really not happen in real life. And we
Right.
talk about TikTok, and they're like, well, this is on TikTok. This is the news. This is what I hear. This is what I'm seeing. And we're like, you have to break it down. You have to do, and they're young, so they don't always do it, but research. And sometimes we're like, okay, that's what you
Mm-hmm.
saw, but is this real? What do you think would happen? So again, it's just that you've got to teach, you've got to educate. And I think AI can be great in some ways of teaching this and educating, but there are downfalls to anything else. So.
Right. Yeah. And I appreciate you bringing up the reality TV, the animated shows, or whatever it is. This feels like it weaves into the relationship skills, and also the social awareness piece. That's more so actually what clicked in my brain. The social awareness, like being aware of what we're watching here, being aware of what's going on around us. And even though it's not necessarily social back and forth, we're still interacting with this show, with this series, with this TikTok video, whatever it is. Are we aware that there are setups, that this is fake, that this person didn't actually get hurt in this, whatever it is? That education seems to be really key in this day and age. But
I was going to say with the social awareness piece too, and even the self-awareness, body language.
Mm,
Younger now generations cannot read body language because they are on their phones so much. They're not paying attention to others. So they use the term roasting a lot. And I'm like, you're not roasting, you're not being funny, you're just being mean, and you're not
hmm.
seeing how the person's backing away. So even that social awareness is a huge piece in teaching them too.
Yeah, I love that. How would you start just like building awareness on body language and that being one part of that social awareness?
So a lot of it is working with the kids, and it's doing the basic things. If you see someone with their arms crossed, and here's a face, here, what do we see? I actually was trained in something called Komochis by our Virginia DOE program, and they're little characters and emotions. And I actually go in the classrooms and give the kids different emotions, and they have to say, "Time I felt this." But then we have fun with it. We're like, well, what might embarrass look like on someone? And the kids are able to see each other's body and facial languages, and it's a volunteer if they want to stand up and do it in front of the class. But it's
Right.
it's fun, and the kids start going, "Oh, well, I would do this and I would do that," and so it allows not only the kids to see it, but the teachers to see how the kids
Hmm.
react in different situations. So it sounds very basic, but it is of like, oh, well, when they're mad, this is the face they make. Or simply, if I'm sitting too close to someone and they scoot away, don't keep scooting closer because they're trying to get away from me.
Right.
It's the basic, very, very basic level learning that we do.
Yeah, but like to your point, all these things are learned or they're not.
Yeah.
Like so being able to break it down where they're at is like, oh, yeah, when somebody's arms are crossed and their head's kind of down, they might be afraid or lonely or nervous, and like that's just naming that is so powerful and important. Now this kid, to your point, with these role playing exercises, they're able to like, oh, like maybe they need somebody to talk to. Maybe I could comfort them. Maybe they need some alone time, right? But like we're helping them develop these awarenesses, and really like that's why I love this work. I can tell you're passionate about it, obviously trained in it like to a high level, but this is why I love it, because it's like these are the skills that build compassion, connection, empathy, like supportive, loving communities, really, and everybody knows we could use a little bit of more of that. It's that continuous lifelong learning and improvement community wise as well, but it starts with these individual skills.
Yes, very much so.
So you broke down, and I had a podcast last week that I really enjoyed when she took me through a little exercise, and you mentioned the grounding exercises that you would do.
Mhm.
What's your favorite grounding exercise, and could we do it?
Um, oh, I love breathing, so I'm a big breather. But for my kids who aren't, I do the five senses, and we can definitely do it. It's very simple. Um, it starts with, so you use your sight, sound, taste, all of your main five senses. There's a lot more than five, but we have our five main senses. So when I'm in school, I do switch it up a little bit because smell sometimes is a little harder to do. If we're in the cafeteria, though, I might increase smell. So there is a traditional way of doing it, but I kind of do it my own. So the first one you do is find five things you can see. And we don't
Mm-hmm.
talk about it. We just look for five things we can see.
Okay,
And yeah,
got you.
and like a good time. Then I do four things you can feel.
Hmm. As I'm like massaging my laptop keyboard right now.
Yeah. You'd be interested in what you do. I do three things you can hear.
Mm-hmm.
When they're in a classroom, they hear a lot more. Two things you can smell.
Usually this microphone can have like I just washed it, so it's kind of
Oh.
soapy.
And then I do one thing you can taste.
Mm.
Mhm. So I do that. And I do meditation with the kids. We do true meditation of reading. We do taste mindfulness. I do a lot with them. So they have
Yeah.
different things. So they're aware that you can practice anywhere.
Yeah. And I appreciate too that just the acknowledgement that like, okay, breathing, super powerful. I'm a certified breathwork facilitator. I love it. It's super helpful for me. It's with us wherever we go, super accessible, free, like all these benefits to breathing. But to your point, it might not be for everybody. Some people might find it boring. And so being able to give these other different options, because there's so many of them out there that can help us relax, get present, release stress, like so many things. Like that's why it's so powerful to have somebody like you in the community, or therapists, or, coaches, like whoever it is, that have these skills at hand, because then these kids are getting different things to try and finding what works for them. Are there any other like resources or places, people, types of people that you suggest like parents can kind of like look out for when they're searching for some of these techniques? What works for my kid?
Yeah, and and I do. There's a lot, depending on the severity of the child. Sometimes we do suggest counseling. If the more open a parent is with us, the more resources we can provide, because we know maybe what happened in their past or what's happening now. So it does allow more resources. So we do that. And I do tell parents, here's a list of resources. There's a ton of free ones out there that you can do. You can type in, like there's the CASEL framework, the CASEL framework. You can type those up and parents can find them for free. And it goes through what social emotional learning is step by step. And I tell parents, look, just because you're trying it and it doesn't work, don't quit. It takes more than 1 to 2 times. It's going to take maybe 100 times before you decide, okay, this isn't it. But it's okay to incorporate other things with it as well. Some
Right.
parents are like, oh, well, my kid eats the coat. Okay, find healthy snacks alternatives to eat to cope. Talk to them about what they're tasting when they do it, like the taste mindfulness, what they feel, what they see. And as they do that, the kids start to open up. And we do work with parents. Thankfully, in the county I work, Caroline County, we have a program called parentguidance.org. And it's absolutely free. So parents can go in and watch videos about how to, either live videos or recorded videos, talk to a counselor, psychiatrist, all free, about how to help their kids too. So we use that a lot, and we are lucky to have that. But a lot of it's just trial and error. What do you do to calm down? Try teaching your kids that. Don't think it won't work because of their age or anything like that. And we are cautious nowadays with what we say sometimes, just because we don't want to make anyone mad or offended at us, but maybe limit what they're playing on games, what they're watching, screen time, get them outside, kind of like how I grew up without all the internet and without all that. Just being present is a huge piece for your kids.
And I think, right, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the goal of a lot of these practices, is to just get back to the present, not to be disconnected through a device, or just like somewhere in the future in our mind, or in the past, or but to just get back here and now. Is that accurate in your experience?
Well, it is. And I get it. Sometimes having the TV or playing a game on your phone, the mindlessness activities can be very mindful for people too, because they are cleaning their brain. They don't have to think about anything. So I get that. I can't say I haven't done that before, because I have.
Right.
And sometimes the TikTok scroll, the funny videos, that does help you kind of ground, but it's limiting what you're doing and how much you're doing it.
Right.
We're learning some of the things that kids are seeing in Fortnite, they're bringing to school, and they're definitely things that as a first and second grader, I didn't even know was a real thing, and probably till I was college. So they're learning a lot faster. They're learning things they shouldn't probably be learning at their age, but we know that it's not something we can stop, but it's educating on how we can help this.
Right. Yeah. And once again, I think the thing that I keep coming back to in this conversation is the awareness piece. That's the first piece, and it's self-awareness, and just the awareness of these different things that our kids are going to get exposed to. Bringing awareness to this thing that is, maybe not the way we would want it as a parent. Okay, we're aware of that. Here's how we can approach it. Here are some tools that help me. I really appreciate that. I think that ties really nicely into another question I want to ask you today, Alicia, around just modeling emotional awareness, regulation. We can share something with our kid that works, but just talk to us a little bit about how important the modeling side of things is.
So both in my house and at work, actually, I model the behaviors. I teach the kids that when they are getting a little too loud and rambunctious in class when I'm doing lessons, they actually see me close my eyes, take a deep breath, and I'll count from 10. If it's just me, I'll do it to myself. But when it's with the kids, I'll do it. And they're like, oh, we're getting, too loud. This fuse is letting us know we're getting too much. We need to bring it back. And so I model that behavior for the kids. And then,
Mm-hmm.
like, if some of the kids start saying inappropriate things, it's very much the model of, okay, well, let's move on from that. I can talk to you later about this. And the kids, some of the kids are not into the lessons. That's fine that I do the classroom lessons, and I get it. Not
Mm-hmm.
everyone is, but it's remodeling that behavior of staying calm, being aware. If it's interesting because the kids can read once they build those relationships to you what kind of day you're coming in with just as well as they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I found honesty with them of like, hey, I've had a rough morning. It's been a long day. Like, I wish I had been able to do your lesson sooner, but I couldn't. So we're going to work together through this. So let's just be
Mm-hmm.
really super respectful of each other. And they do. Once they have that honesty in that relationship too, that's a big thing. Because I always tell the kids, look, in our who we're going to be and who we're going to grow, we've got to be honest and we got to be kind. The kids really know that about me.
Mm-hmm.
So they know if I'm getting frustrated, they know, okay, let's do something else while Miss Fuse is doing a lesson, or let's, hey, we need to tone it down because this is where we are. But they also can see where if they're getting really bored, I'm like, okay, let's do a fun activity. So, our own awareness and being aware of others and our emotions definitely has to play off for them. And I definitely try to model that for them. A lot
Yeah.
of kids like hug and some kids overhug, but that's their coping skill. I'm like, okay, so how can we work on this? How about we ask if somebody wants a hug and then we do like a 10-second count and we don't over squeeze. And I said, I get it. You need the hugs. That's your coping skill. And they're like, yeah. I said, but we have to be aware that some people just don't want to be touched or hugged. And so, it is modeling that behavior, practicing it with them.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And yeah, I just appreciate that you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable with them and not hiding, not being fake. They can read past that, right? Like they can totally read past that. And then there's not as much respect. There's not as much empathy there because we're not allowing them the opportunity to be empathetic by being vulnerable, and
Exactly.
I think it was, I grew up in a very loving household, but there were a lot of things that were hidden. A lot of emotions were just like, just not addressed, not acknowledged, not labeled, and
Yeah.
spoken about. And that caused me to do the same thing with those emotions, and it's ineffective. In my experience, it leads to the bottling up and the burning out and resentment and all these things that aren't enjoyable for really anyone. And I think this that you're sharing right now is like that's the powerful, I guess, like call to action or action that we can take is being vulnerable in those situations. And you're doing it with, 15, 20, 30 kids at a time and it's working. So I'd imagine the same sort of approach would work with our own kids, one at a time, two, three at a time. Um, yeah. Can you, what's something that you'd like to remind parents of that will support them when things get challenging, chaotic, overwhelming, or when they find themselves trying to kind of hide how they're feeling?
That definitely is my household. So my kids have learned, when I've had a rough day or things, um, definitely is still one to kind of hide the emotions in my own house. Ironically, I teach people not to, but I do it. So with my kids, we've really worked through talking about how we feel, showing our emotions, or if it's, hey, I need 5 minutes alone before I can do anything, it's telling me I need 5 minutes alone.
Mm-hmm.
How we treat our kids when they are having meltdowns or whatever else, we have to remember that they're not bad kids. It's a behavior they're displaying. That's their behavior. That's how they're expressing their emotion and how they feel and telling us. And it's not the things we'd like to see or we want to approve of, or, the yelling and screaming and calling us names, but it's also staying calm. And if we can't, excusing ourselves from the situation, be like, look, this is not working. I've got to walk away. You've got to walk away from me. Like, we got to take a break from each other because we're never going to get anywhere with this. Or if
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, we'll put this on hold or pause, at some point we are going to finish this conversation. And in my house, my kids are very much, I have two, the 16-year-old I was telling and a 13-year-old daughter. We are very much, if you're honest with us, you could still get in trouble for what you did, but it might be a lot less trouble than what you did versus if you lie. We're very much just be kind to each other in the end, because kindness is all that matters. That's part of our social awareness, being kind to everyone and everything. And can I say it's a perfect household? Absolutely not. We fight, we argue, we're like a normal
Right.
family. But a lot of people laugh, and my family laughs because it's a different advantage, I think, having a school counselor in the household versus a non-school counselor, because of how things are handled, how things are relegated, and punishments and things are worked out. Just having that own awareness of things, it makes a difference. But honestly, sometimes it's just sitting with my kids in the quiet, and if they want to lay on me or they need a hug, okay, that's fine. That's what we're doing. And
Mm-hmm.
my kids have learned the term space invader. So if I've had a really lot of touchy feely day that day, like with the kids and stuff, I'm like, okay, I need a space invader break. And they know that means, okay, mom just needs some space for a little bit. Then we can go back and go, okay, you ready? And so
Right.
it is open communication. It really is.
Yeah, I love that. I imagine I'm heading into parenthood for the first time in November. But I'm excited for that openness, and just like the realness that you're talking about, and the requests of like, hey, I need, or knowing you're being self-aware, knowing
Yeah.
your coping strategies. I need 5 minutes. I'm going to go in here, I'm going to do my thing, and then I can come back out, and now we can reconnect, and the social awareness that, hey, this isn't going anywhere, this conversation, this argument. We're both up here at a 10. We both need some time to regulate, and then we can come back and build this relationship again.
Yeah.
And make responsible decisions, but no, truly, like, make those decisions. It just feels like those castle guidelines that you mentioned, the 5 from the jump, can really be a framework that people can use in their everyday life to step by step work through challenges and chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really appreciate everything that you've shared today, all the things that you've broken down, the resources. Once again, that's Castle. It might be .org or .com, CASEL.
If you just type in that with framework, you'll get a ton of resources.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Anything else that you want to share or drop in, or a place where people can get in touch with you potentially to ask follow-up questions or just say thanks?
Well, thank you. I mean, if people do have follow up questions, I do have my LinkedIn account, just Alicia Fuse. They can always find me there, or, if they reach out to you, I know you have my email. I'm more than willing to have people reach out through my email if they want as well. More than happy.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, once again, Alicia, thank you so much to all the listeners out there. Thank you guys for tuning in. We hope you found this helpful. Feel free to share this with a friend, a parent. It's truly this initiative here with the podcast is all about just spreading awareness around social emotional learning and skills that can help boost mental health, build relationships, and a loving, supportive community. So we do appreciate your time and support. Alicia, thanks again.